After retiring from 30 grueling years as a city firefighter, all I craved was silence, real, uninterrupted silence. That's why I bought a Tenica ranch tucked against the foothills of Elk Hollow, Colorado. No sirens, no smog, just open sky, pine trees, and the wind humming through the valleys. I named the place Ember Ridge, a quiet nod to my old life. I spent my first year building things by hand: the house, the stable, a tall iron gate with a keypad, and the centerpiece, a deep, rectangular pool nestled between 2 rows of aspens. It was a reward I'd promised myself. No fancy fountains, no mosaic tiles, just a solid pool with clean water and a view of the snowcaps. For a while, it was perfect, until the development crept in. They called it the Meadows at Elk Hollow. Cute name, soulless homes, uniform fences, manicured lawns, and the one thing I loathed most, an HOA ID. Done my homework before buying. My parcel sat outside any planned community. I had a separate deed, my own zoning, and zero legal ties to the Meadows. Still, their presence brought foot traffic, leaflets, and one particular nuisance, Karen Walker. I met her when I found her photographing my ranch gate. "Can I help you?" I asked, leaning against my fence post. She didn't even flinch, just raised her chin and smiled like she was issuing a parking ticket. "I'm Karen, president of the Elk Hollow Homeowners Association. We're conducting a perimeter inventory for neighborhood compliance. Neighborhood compliance, for safety, harmony, and uniform aesthetics." I chuckled. "I'm not in your HOA, Karen." Her smile didn't fade. If anything, it calcified. "If your property impacts the visual character of the community, we have grounds for inclusion." "Not according to the county clerk," I said, tapping the gate keypad. "Have a good day." She didn't leave. She stood there a few minutes longer, scribbling in her notebook, as if sheer persistence could rewrite property law. That was just the beginning. Over the next month, she left 7 notices taped to my gate. They accused me of violations like excessive barn height, unauthorized wildlife attractants, and non-conforming pool visibility. She referenced HOA bylaws with all the zeal of a prosecutor but none of the authority. I ignored her, but she kept escalating. Then came the pool. It was early March, still cold. The water was covered, locked behind a Rotoron enclosure. No one used it until late May. But that didn't stop Karen from showing up again, this time with a measuring tape. "You've left the pool uncovered," she said, snapping pictures through the bars. "It's got a winter cover, secured at 8 points. There are children in this community. Pools are a liability if not appropriately closed. It's on private land, behind a locked gate. You'd need a battering ram and 3 bad decisions to get inside." Karen's expression twisted. "I've already reported it to the board." "I don't have a board." "You will," she said, stepping off my driveway. "And they won't be as patient as I've been." That's when it clicked. She wasn't just enforcing rules, she was trying to pull me under her control. Maybe it was about power. Maybe she hated the fact that my place stood apart from her tidy little kingdom. Or maybe, deep down, she just couldn't handle a no she couldn't punish. Either way, I didn't budge. I figured if I ignored her long enough, she'd move on to someone easier to push around. But Karen didn't move on. 3 days later, I was chopping firewood when I heard the sound of gravel crunching under tires. Then the flicker of red and blue lights lit up my front window. Sheriff's cruisers, 4 of them by the time I got outside. Karen was already there, arms crossed, mouth ready. She called in a safety hazard, one deputy told me, nodding toward the pool. Said neighborhood kids were at risk. That was the moment I realized something vital. This wasn't just a feud, it was war. And Karen, she'd just fired the first shot. The sheriff's deputies fanned out across my gravel drive like they were responding to a standoff. I stood still, axe in hand, heart pounding, not from fear, but from disbelief. All this over a covered pool. One of the deputies, a tall man with a mustache and tight eyes, approached cautiously. "Mr. Redford." I nodded, wiping sweat from my brow. "Yeah, what's this about?" He tilted his head toward Karen, who was already mid-rant behind him. "Got a call from a community safety officer. Claimed your pool was unsecured and posed a danger to local kids. Something about repeated warnings being ignored." I exhaled slowly and motioned for him to follow me around the back of the ranch house. We walked past the barn and toward the pool enclosure, a 10-foot black wrought iron fence with a locked gate and a winterized cover stretched taut over the pool's surface. Everything up to code. In fact, I'd gone beyond what the state required. He inspected it, rattled the gate, then crouched down to inspect the cover's anchors. "Looks secure to me." "Because it is," I said. "Karen's been pestering me for months with these bogus HOA notices. I've told her repeatedly I'm not in their jurisdiction." He stood and scratched his neck. "Yeah, this doesn't add up. There's no violation here." We returned to the front, where Karen was pacing, phone out, recording everything. Her voice was shrill, full of fury masquerading as civic duty. "I demand a citation be issued," she barked. "This man's negligence endangers children. I've filed reports, I've left notices. You have a duty to act." The deputy held up a hand. "Ma'am, the pool is locked, fenced, and properly covered. There's no hazard here." Karen's face flushed. "So you're just going to let him break the rules?" That's dereliction of duty. I said there's no violation, the deputy repeated firmly. And for the record, making a false report to law enforcement is a misdemeanor offense. Karen's eyes widened. Excuse me. We rolled out 4 units because you told dispatch it was an emergency. You claimed there were children in immediate danger. That's not what we found. If you waste our resources again, we'll press charges. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She turned toward me seething. You haven't heard the last of this, she hissed. I'll take this to the HOA board, to the county, to the state, if I have to. Do that, I said, folding my arms. And while you're at it, check the county map again. You'll find my land's not under your thumb. She stormed off down the driveway, heels clacking against gravel like the world's angriest metronome. The deputies lingered a few minutes longer, one of them offering a half apology. We get these calls sometimes. People think HOA rules are law. They're not. No hard feelings, I said, shaking his hand. You're just doing your job. But something about Karen's last words unsettled me. To the county, to the state. She wasn't just trying to boss me around anymore. She was escalating. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a beer and my property deed. Every line was clear. My land, my rights, no HOA affiliation. But Karen wasn't one to accept facts that didn't suit her. I decided it was time to get proactive. The next morning, I called my attorney, Dale Simmons. He'd helped with the purchase of the ranch years ago and was sharp as they came. She's been pushing bogus violations, he asked. Yep, but now she's weaponized the sheriff's department. Send me the deed, a timeline of what's happened, and any documentation she's left. I'll start looking into it. By the end of the week, Dale called back with something odd. There's a new HOA boundary map filed with the county dated 6 months ago. It includes your parcel. That's impossible, I said. It should be, but the filing shows your lot along with 2 others as incorporated into HOA jurisdiction by majority vote. I stared out my window at the land I'd worked for. She had forged her reach beyond her limits, and she did it in writing. She forged HOA jurisdiction. Looks that way. Which means, Dale said, voice tightening, she may have committed fraud. Big fraud. That's when the stakes shifted. This wasn't a petty power play anymore. Karen had tampered with legal boundaries, and if she thought calling the cops on me was the worst mistake she'd make, she was about to find out just how wrong she was. 2 days after my lawyer discovered Karen's fraudulent map filing, I sat across from him in his downtown office, fingers laced, heart beating like a war drum. Dale slid a thick manila envelope across the table. Here's everything, he said. Original plats, your deed, the HOA's articles of incorporation, and this, he tapped a photocopy with a red circled section, is the altered map Karen submitted to the county clerk. My property, Ember Ridge, was clearly marked as part of the meadows at Elk Hollow, shaded in HOA green like I'd been absorbed without a word. She claimed it was a majority vote. I asked, jaw clenched. Yep, but you weren't invited to any vote, no petition, no consent, and even if she had gotten signatures, it's not legal to annex land without owner approval. Dale paused. It's textbook fraud. I leaned back slowly. And she's been collecting money on this. Dale's brow rose. More than that. We dug into the HOA's public grant applications. Turns out Karen's been using your land and the view from your pool as part of her marketing. He handed me a glossy brochure. I blinked. There it was. A drone photo of my ranch pool. My pool captioned, shared community amenities enhancing scenic value for all residents. She used my property to get state funding, to the tune of $2.5 million in beautification and conservation grants. My knuckles turned white around the edge of the envelope, and she never asked for permission. Not once. She filed these documents claiming shared rights under an expanded HOA footprint. That's not a mistake, that's intentional. Karen had crossed a legal line and she'd sprinted past it with forged paperwork in hand. So, what's next? I asked. Dale's eyes gleamed. I've already contacted the Attorney General's office. I know someone there. Once I hand them this, it won't just be civil, it could go criminal. That same week, a formal inquiry began. The Attorney General's office assigned a compliance investigator named Audrey Kleinsharpsuit, sharper mind. She arrived at Ember Ridge on a Thursday morning with a team of 2, armed with clipboards, body cams, and a polite but clinical professionalism. I'm here to confirm boundary discrepancies and assess claims of misrepresentation, Audrey said. Happy to help, I replied, guiding her through the gates. Over the next few hours, I provided every document, every HOA notice, every photo Karen had taken of my property. Audrey nodded as she listened, but it wasn't until she pulled out her own copy of the HOA's filings that her eyebrows arched. She submitted drone footage without an FAA license. She trespassed to take it, I added. That single quotes S. Significant. Then came the interviews. Not just with me but with other neighbors. Turns out Karen had tried roping 2 other properties into her fake expansion plan, both belonging to older couples who didn't realize what she was doing until now. She told us it was just paperwork. One woman said we were helping the community. By the end of the week, Audrey returned to Dale's office and laid it out plainly. There's enough to move forward. fraud, falsifying documents, unauthorized land use, and misappropriation of state funds. Will she be prosecuted? I asked. Audrey nodded. Highly likely. And the HOA board may also be liable for approving the filings. We've seen this kind of thing before, power-hungry boards inflating their reach for personal gain. I thought about Karen, how she'd strutted up my driveway, brandishing her clipboard like a badge, how she called the sheriff to harass me, how she stared down at my ranch like it belonged to her. She wasn't just a nuisance anymore, she was a con artist in pearls and pumps. The state began building its case. Karen was issued a cease and desist, her accounts were frozen, her face disappeared from the HOA website. Then came the final insult. State investigators seized the grant funds pending a full audit, and the HOA received notice of a $2.5 million reimbursement demand. Karen had roped them all into a scheme, and now the entire association was drowning in the fallout. I sat by my pool that night, beer in hand, stars reflected off the water's surface. She wanted control. She got caught, instead, but the hammer hadn't dropped yet. That was still coming, and I'd be there to watch every second. 3 weeks after the investigation launched, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Mr. Redford, Audrey Klein said, voice firm, calm, almost clinical. Karen Walker has been officially charged. Wire fraud, document falsification, and misappropriation of state funds. A full indictment will be made public by end of day. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked out at the pool, the same one she tried to turn into a weapon, a symbol of control. Now it was the evidence that undid her. She's facing serious penalties, Audrey added, and your name's been cleared from all HOA records. The county is issuing an official retraction. Will she serve time? I finally asked. That's up to the courts, but restitution, that's guaranteed. And that includes the $2.50 million grant money. I hung up, half stunned, half thrilled. She didn't just lose her case, she dragged the entire HOA down with her. Their funding was revoked, their bylaws frozen for review, and their insurance company was backing away, like it had touched fire. It wasn't long before the news broke. HOA president charged in $2.5 million land fraud scheme. My phone lit up with texts from neighbors, even those within the meadows, many of whom hadn't realized how deeply Karen's control ran. Some apologized, some thanked me. A few just wanted to know if the story was real. Oh, it was real, and it wasn't over yet. See, I'd filed my own lawsuit. Property defamation, harassment, illegal surveillance, civil damages from false enforcement threats. Dale handled everything with surgical precision, and Karen, now without a board, a job, or her HOA protection, had to foot her legal bills alone. The best part, during the investigation, auditors found that Karen had skimmed HOA dues to pay for personal expenses, spa visits, hotel upgrades, even a Peloton bike labeled as community fitness equipment. By the end of the month, her assets were frozen. Her house, yes, the 2-story stucco she used to glare from, was listed for foreclosure to cover the mounting fines and restitution demands. I drove past it one morning on my way into town and saw the for sale sign out front, hanging crooked on one bent nail. Poetic. But the cherry on top came in the form of a court order. Karen was legally barred from having any official position on any HOA board in the state of Colorado for life. I finally had my peace. Still, I wasn't done securing Ember Ridge. I paid a contractor to erect a new row-tying fence around the property 15 feet high with decorative spikes and an automated camera system. On the gate, I installed a custom metal sign that read, "Private property, not now, not ever HOA." Neighbors chuckled when they drove past. Even the deputies who once responded to a bogus call waved and smiled. Now one of them stopped by to tell me Karen's sentencing was set for the fall. Restitution first, jail time probably next. I nodded and handed him a lemonade. Karen had tried to bend my life into her little version of order, rules, fines, control. She saw my pool as a threat to uniformity, my ranch as a challenge to her power. But in the end, all she did was drown herself in a lie too big to swim out of. Weeks later, as summer warmed, the mountains and the aspens whispered their golden secrets. I finally took a long swim in that pool, the same one that started it all. Water crisp, sky clear, fence secure, and not a single clipboard in sight.